and welcome to Sunrise Daily. It's 26 degrees Celsius right here in the nation's capital, and the humidity, 24%. All right, well, welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Kayla Megwa.
Well, the weather is the same here in Lagos, the nation's commercial capital. And I'm Odoh Kilo. I must say there's a lot of nostalgia flowing through my head right now, through my body. So is this like a welcome back thing? Particularly for those who didn't get a surprise. Surprise, surprise. This is how we surprise you for the Yuletide, I guess. Kayla.
Well, it's going to be me and you. I hope it's me and you for a few more days. Because it's good to have you here with us, Kayode. So what's happening in Lagos this morning? What's the weather like? How's everyone feeling in that city?
You know, the weather in Lagos is measured by traffic. Okay, it's one of the few places where you measure weather using traffic. Okay, so I can tell you that, of course, Lagos is as busy as you'll expect. 2 days, just 1 day actually, to the end of the year. So a lot of people with last-minute preparations. Some are trying to travel at this point. There's a lot of commercial activities ongoing, I must say. Some have closed, but I tell you, it's really tough for people to just sleep in Lagos. So it is busy. That is what the weather is like here in Lagos.
I mean, it's a little different here. First of all, this is one of the hottest Christmases. It's just hot. For some reason, you're sweating in the nation's capital in December. Maybe this climate change thing is real. Who knows? Yeah. You know, and then, of course, a very strange December that we're having in the nation's capital, in the sense that the place is full of people. So that usual empty Abuja didn't happen this year. Many people are attributing that to the economy. And of course, these increase in flight fares and travel fares, and a lot of that is probably making a lot of people stay back. So we do have a busy nation's capital, and it will be a busy new year as well. But that's not what we're here to talk about. Let's start off with our skyline this morning. We are going to River State, actually Port Harcourt. The refinery is what we're looking at. It's beautiful and supposed to be a lifesaver for the country. It's one of those places that has been mired in a lot of controversy in the past few days, past few weeks, and past few months. In fact, let me say years, because I remember they kept giving us a timeline as to when it was going to start functioning. And then when it did start, one thing after the other, one rumor after the other. One person will come and say, they've shut down activities. Then NNPC will say, it's misguided. Don't listen to such people. Then we hear that they're not actually refining, they're actually blending. And then they tell us, but blending is a part of the process. Sometimes when it comes to things like this, maybe it's time to just take a breather and watch and see how it unfolds. But at the same time, that accountability is what's necessary. Nigerians are asking more questions now than ever before. And those in authority, those who are in charge of, businesses, because it is a business like this one, especially one that we are so invested in as a people, have to be a little bit more clear, a little bit more circumspect, and a little bit more accountable. Talk to us more, explain things more, bore us with information. That way there are no speculations out there. Kayode, what are your thoughts on this refinery?
Well, I think it's a mixed bag of sorts, Kayla. For one, I'm glad that a lot of people are now more interested. They have some more knowledge about that sector. It's been very opaque. In fact, still is opaque, but I think there's some sort of clarity. On a scale of 1 to 10, I would say 2. And that's coming from maybe -5, Kayla. So I think that's one of the high points for me. But of course, as you said, this has been one controversial project, and it dates back to 1965 when the old plant was commissioned. Yes, 1965, 5 years after Nigeria's independence. And of course, the new one was commissioned 1989. That's about 35 years ago. But it's not been a sweet journey, really, when it comes to this refinery. But eventually, the old one came back on stream. As you said, the back and forth. Is it blending? Has it shut down? NNPC put out a lot of statements to that. Even took people to the refinery just to show them the work being done. But is that enough to convince people, particularly because we have the new refinery, we have a Kaduna refinery, and the rest that are still not working? So it's a mixed bag. Because of this, we have petrol at 899 naira, at least coming from the refinery. A lot of people can buy it less than 1,000 naira because, well, this has come on stream. But again, is that enough? The jury is out there. But maybe take a moment to just see the vast infrastructure which the Port Harcourt refinery is this morning. I think that may also help to push the message home and help people to ask for more accountability, Kayla.
84 megawatts gas-fired electric power plant, 4 boilers with a steam generation capacity of 120 tons per hour. You know, petrol, diesel. It's not just petrol they make it. Petrol, diesel, liquefied petroleum gas, paraffin for aircraft and households, low viscosity fuel oil and high viscosity fuel oil. So lots of potential in the Port Harcourt refinery. Hey, I mean, sometimes, you know, like I said earlier, bore us with information, okay? Yeah. Flood us with information. Do a statement every day. There are departments that do this for you. Bore us with the information. Let's be safe. This Port Harcourt refinery people, they talk too much. Yes, let them keep talking to us. As long as there's information out there, you won't get a lot of the speculations that you see online, all right? So flood us with information, and we wish you all the best. It's a refinery that we are all very invested in. All right, well, it's time for us to take a look at what the headlines are this morning.
This morning, 30th of December, 2024. The headlines are as diverse as the papers. Look at the front page of the Guardian newspaper. States spend more than earned to further rely on FAC income. That's the lead story of the paper this morning. The details you find on the inside pages. Naira slide threatens 2025 fiscal plan as the lead story of the Vanguard newspaper. As CBN's forex policy flops. Budget rose 74% nominally, but shrunk 2.3% in real value. The front page of New Telegraph, year of intriguing politics, how Rivers crisis, hardship protests, cabinet reshuffle, others shaped Nigeria's polity in 2024. The details of that story you'll find on the inside pages of New Telegraph today. The Nigerian Tribune has this one on its front page. Despite 11 trillion naira contribution to GDP, high building materials costs heighten housing shortage in 2024. Find details on page 24 of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. This Nigeria, Rivers crisis, Wike tackles ex-governor Odoh. Between him and myself, who has turned Rivers State into his personal estate? It's a question. His wife is a chairman of governing council. His daughter is a commissioner. His daughter is a judge. And he is the general overseer. Find the details of that story on the inside pages. Blueprint 2025 will be very tough for dealers in fake food medicines. Story is attributed to NAFDAC and is on the inside pages of Blueprint newspaper. Nigerian News Direct has no scarcity in festive season proves food deregulation is benefiting Nigerians. Described to Lokobiri. Details on page 3. Daily Trust newspaper. More knocks for Niger military ruler. Border communities, others hate Chiani. His claims lack evidence, as from Côte d'Ivoire. The details on the inside pages of the paper. The Daily Times newspaper has African fashion industry worth $30 billion, says Handysim CEO. Check the details on the inside pages. Daily Independent has 2025 budget. FG earmarks 55.5 billion naira for presidential air fleets. Proposes 8.6 billion naira to repair air navigational equipment. NSTB plans 2 billion naira for construction of Yola Delta offices. Details on page 29 of the paper this morning. And these are the papers we have for you today.
Oh, there you have it. The holidays notwithstanding, the news is still buzzing. Big stories. And take a look at the front page of The Guardian yet again. And it talks about the state of our states, the subnationals. Lots of attention must be paid to the subnationals. Spending more. The budget sizes have increased. But the dollar equivalent, maybe not. But where will they get money to fund these budgets? But one story, which is tucked just right below the big images on the front page of The Guardian, is what you find there. Atiku faults full military honors accorded Tinubu's son. And a video emerged a few days ago showing some cadets giving military honors to the son of the president, Sheyi Tinubu. And this, of course, caused a lot of uproar. Well, the DHQ on the one hand has disowned the cadets, saying they're not theirs. Some more investigation showed that they belong to the Nigeria Cadet Network carrying arms, by the way. So this definitely raises more questions than answers given. But this is one that has gotten a lot of people talking, and it's targeted directly at our military institutions. If these people are not registered, why are they carrying arms? Why do they have such network? So more answers need to be given, and we need to ensure that we protect such institutions. Kayla.
I think I want to start with the Blueprint before I move on to the Vanguard. The Blueprint newspaper this morning. Two stories that stand out for me, and one of them was actually a major headline over the weekend, and it had to do with NAFDAC. 2025, they say, will be very tough for dealers in fake food and medicine. And it's such a troubling situation that we find ourselves in this country. NAFDAC has destroyed 120 billion naira worth of drugs, food products, in just 6 months. Who are these merchants of death? And when they do these raids, fortunately, I have been on a raid with NAFDAC before, the one that happened at the Utako market. At least I was there. And of course, the other one that happened in Suleja as well, I was there as well. What happens is they go to these stores, and then they pack up, so they get some information. Oh, there's fake drugs here, or something unregistered is in this shop. And then we go there, well, at least we went there in those two cases, and then raid the place, arrest the shop boy or girl, and then film it. Then we do interviews. They say, we are going to catch all these people. And then the question that comes to my mind afterwards is always, this boy that we just arrested, he's just a shop boy. Where is the supplier? I remember one time the drugs were imported according to the container for this powdery substance that shocks me that people would even use. That powder, it was imported from Ghana. The other they say it's imported from parts of West Africa. That takes a lot of planning and a lot of people. A lot of people come together to make this particular business work. Where are those people? When we arrest the shop boy, and we hope that the shop boy will lead us to the uncle that started the business, or to the auntie that hired him. What about the importer? What about the manufacturer? The place where this was created. There needs to be more done. NAFDAC is doing a good job. I'm not trying to knock them down this morning. They're not doing a bad job at all. But more needs to be done. We need to see more kingpins. We need to see more of these people who, own these businesses being brought to justice, named, shamed, sent to court, and all of that. So all of that has to happen, and that's something I hope improves in 2025. But that story there from the Blueprint newspaper. We'll go on a short break. When we come back, our press conversation starts. Stay with us.
Taken the top choices. We have seen maybe where we have seen the worst we could see, and not unexpected. That is why social protection was improved. So what we are expecting to see in 25 is better economic, lower inflation, more employment opportunities, more support for businesses, more infrastructure development, more funding of security and better security, and all those priority areas, human capital development, education, health, we are sure to see more in that direction, and the quality of life will get better.
That is the hope for 2025. And that is someone who will be in a position to tell us what it is that the 2025 year should hold for the Nigerian people. And it's a very interesting dynamic because we're looking at the budget, we're looking at the economy, we're looking at its ability to move our economy from where it is to where it's supposed to be. And you heard him right there, speaking about a better economy, less inflation, human capital development, and all of these great and beautiful things. Well, we have some economists with us on the program to discuss this and more. Joining me in the studio right now is Mr. Taufik Raimi. Thank you so much. Development expert, business, economic, and policy analyst. Thank you so much for being with us on the program.
Thank you for having me, and a season greeting to you and our viewers.
Good to have you here with us. And joining us via Zoom is Mr. Paul Alaje, seasoned economist. Nice to have you with us on the program as well.
Thank you so much for having me. Compliments of the season.
Compliments of the season to you too, Mr. Paul Alaje. Let's start off with Mr. Raimi. You listened to the minister there. He's in a position to tell us what his budget and planning is his purview. So what do you make of what he is? Is he realistic or is he just being hopeful?
Yeah, the Minister of Budget and National Planning for the federal government, I think he has spoken what he knows, and the budget that has been prepared for our country, that's at the federal level, is 49.7 trillion, as you know. I want to believe, based on the foundations that have been done in 2024, a lot of economic reforms that have taken place, we should be hopeful. We should have belief that there will be restoration, as the president described the budget for 2025.
So hopeful, not realistic, though?
No, it's realistic to some extent.
To what extent is it realistic?
You know, to a greater extent, when you look at, like I said, some of the works, the reforms that have been taken on by the president in the last 18 to 19 months, we believe, like we have analyzed severally, that maybe the worst of what we have experienced is over. However, for this budget of restoration to actually restore economic growth to Nigeria, to us as citizens, we must ensure that our revenue expectations are not dampened. So I believe it's realistic to some extent. Whereas there are other areas of concern that we have to ensure that will not impact negatively. Like, for instance, the resurgence of insecurity can worsen our agricultural produce for 2025 if it is not tackled frontially. So that is a concern. But when you look at the economic indices, we may be closing out the year at 3.46 or 3 point, thereabout. GDP growth is estimated by that next year we'll be doing about 4% GDP growth. In all of this, what our citizens want to see is how would the budget 2025 impact their life. This can only happen if we have continuous growth, development in infrastructure. I want also to see priority for food production, because that has been a big challenge for us this year. So it's realistic to some extent, and there are other concerns that the government must tackle, just like I mentioned. Priority must be given to fighting insecurity of various types. Priority must be given to control this hyperinflation that we have experienced over time. Priority must be given for the crude oil production, daily production of 2.06 million barrels per day to be achieved. Priority must be given for us to also achieve diversification of our economy. Government must also ensure that there is adequate inflow, that's foreign direct investment based on the various journeys and trips that the presidents have made. So I have hope. The hope is not lost. I am still believing that it is possible. The statistics are there based on figures that we have seen and analyzed, but it is still not Uru yet. We must be committed and continuously be committed to achieving economic growth that will impact the life of our people. That is the only way by which this reality can be acknowledged by everyone.
Mr. Paul Alaje, I want to be able to look at those figures. We have a situation where at least there's this report from AfriInvest, I think it came out over the weekend, where they said the Naira might slide further to 1,800 in 2025. The Vanguard is reporting this morning that the budget rose 74% nominally, but shrunk by 23% in real value. And yet, we hear a lot of hope. Mr. Raimi has told us here it's realistic that we would have this reduction in inflation and a better economy. Realistic on some level. Where do you stand on that, based on what the actual figures are?
Thank you so very much, Kayla, for having me. Remember that January this year, you and I had a show. I think it was a special report that you interviewed me on. And I told you that from 2024, when the president presented the budget of hope, that I doubt if the hope is what we expect. The year would be a difficult year. With the benefit of hindsight, you can ask everyone if 2024 was indeed a difficult year. Government projected 21.4% or 6%, 21.4, 21.6% inflation rate. I mentioned to you that inflation will likely remain around 30% corridor. Today, inflation is 34.6% year on year. I also mentioned to you that our debt to GDP, and it's important you can look for that video and put it up there, that our debt to GDP, our debt profile, we crossed 100 trillion naira by the end of the year. Today, our debt profile has crossed 100 trillion naira. The question is, 2025 budget, our government has called it a beautiful name. But when I look at the budget, just like I looked at 2024 budget, the single largest item in 2024 budget is also the single largest item in 2025 budget. What is this single largest item? Debt servicing. Now, what kind of hope can we have that will make us become the like of China, the like of India, and the like of some other countries that were called Asian tigers before they saw the economic miracle? The largest proportion of their budget, up to 30 to 40%, was going into things to encourage manufacturing, things to encourage factory production. That is what we need to see. In this 2025 budget, how many factories will be built? How many factories will be supported? What will be the quality of power supply? Minister of Power had mentioned that we're going to have 6,000 megawatt generation power generation. How many were eventually available with this budget? And please, when I say this budget, I don't mean the only one President Tinubu submitted. I also want to add the budget submitted by the 36 states governors to it in their respective state. Abu signed that power is no longer under exclusive list, it's now under recurrent list. What will be the impact? The truth is that if you don't have power steady for manufacturing, for production, at best, we will be at the realm of hope, will not be at the realm of faith. Faith, economic faith, believing. And when we say faith, I'm not being religious. Faith is one of the reasons why your currency is high or strong. It's the confidence people have in it. So before we get to that point, where we can say that our hope is translating to work and we are seeing economic improvement in our lives, we must agree on something. What is the pattern of our spending? Check out the 36 state governors. What proportion of their income is going into infrastructure? 30%, 15%, 20%. Very few has gone beyond 35% and above. And check the 2025 budget. Government is looking at 15% inflation rate. I doubt it very much. If I tell you what the econometrics number is saying, based on the current policy environment, please underline it. If the policy environment changes, it may improve. Like I told you in 2024 January, that we will remain in 30, in fact, it was not yet 30% as of then, it was 29.9. But I said we will sustain 30%. If this policy environment is still sustained, we will still most likely be around 30% corridor. So we might not see the 15% that we wish to see because it's a mere projection. I doubt if that projection is subjected to econometrics number to project what the future will look like, what the impact will look like. I doubt very much. I've seen that if we say that the budget, you ask a question, how realistic would I think the budget is? Yes, some items on the budget are realistic, but there are some items in the budget that I have a lot of doubt whether they'll be realistic or not.
I mean, I shudder I'm shuddering inside to think of what your predictions for this year would be, because your predictions last year and the year before actually came to fruition. But I'll get to that in a bit. I want Mr. Raimi.
Dr. Raimi.
Dr. Raimi, because I'm calling you Dr. Raimi, to actually speak on some of the things that he mentioned there. He said our policy environment must improve. Is that something you agree with?
No, I quite agree with.
Because I know you're a very strong supporter of this administration,
yeah,
Mr. Raimi,
no, yeah,
Dr.
yes,
Raimi. And he said our pattern of spending, it doesn't give you the hope that some of these things that we aspire for, these lofty things that we're asking to happen in 2025 with our spending pattern and with our policy environment, these are not things that are realistic. And we're looking at a country where the bulk of the population have gone below the poverty line, and there is a hardship, an unbelievable level of hardship in our country. The quality of life of the bulk of Nigerians has gone down, which is why a lot of people were saying that this budget should have been more people-centric. We saw that criticism coming at least from the People's Democratic Party, saying this is not a people-centric budget. In fact, we had experts saying that this budget should have been titled the budget of the common man. But what we heard was budget of restoration, and then these figures, I know we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But you're hearing from Mr. Paul Alaje that with the spending pattern and with our policy environment, it's just not going to happen.
Okay, yes. There's a consensus that is already agreed among majority of analysts that there's still more work to be done. However, the decision, there's also largely some consensus around the reform that have taken place by the current president.
Please let me break that down. When you say some areas that need to be worked on,
yes.
Let's start with that one before we get to the reforms that have happened that you say are beneficial. So
exactly.
what work needs to be done?
The areas that need to be worked on, and I've said this at other forums, is that even now we are all talking about the summary of the entire budget. I would like to see what are the breakdowns, what are the how many projects are devoted for health care, how many schools are planned to be built, what are the funds that are going into to support SME, small, medium, and enterprises, what are the kind of business environment that this budget will inspire. Because the whole goal of economic development is to bring growth and improve the standard of living of people. So while I agree with him that some reforms or new reforms in terms of bringing improve economic environment should be undertaken by our current president in addition to whatever he has done, I also of the opinion that, yes, these are decisions that have been taken, have impacted negatively on majority of Nigeria in this in this closing out year. But you see, that is the nature of tough decisions, that economic decisions that are supposed to be taken. You know, in economics, we say it's a question of alternative and choice. So I want to also see, and I'm challenging the National Assembly, that also they should do rigorous assessment of the capital projects, especially. The capital component of this budget has to be enhanced so that we see the gains as it will now translate to our people in terms of the standard of living. And that is why I am talking of the impact this budget will have on agriculture, the impact it will have on security of life and property, the impact it will have also on manufacturing, like he mentioned, the impact it is going to have on ease of doing business. So, and that's also why I've said that even in terms of evaluating the performance of our ministers, the MDA, that the president should do it more regularly. We don't have luxury of time to wait for another 1 year before he can review the performance of the MDAs, the ministers and the agencies and board that are associated with them. You know, if we turn the country at various states as well into a development site, just like what the federal capital minister has been doing in terms of in the area of infrastructure. You will see that it will impact on job creation. It will also enhance the standard of living of people, because when this budget is supposed to create more jobs for our people, it's supposed to improve the healthcare services, as it were, and that is why I believe the priority this current administration has given to those sectors are laudable, even in terms of fighting insecurity, as I mentioned. But this will not happen. All this we have said about the federal government budget will not also impact meaningfully on the life of our people if the state's budget does not also improve or have been submitted or prepared in a way to impact the life of our people. And the reason is that majority of our people lives in the states. And as you are aware, all of them, 35 out of the 36 states of the Federation have submitted or have submitted their budget to their respective state assembly, totaling about 25 trillion naira, you know, for 2025 budget. And when you look at each of them, only 3 has more than 1 trillion, has over 1 trillion naira as the budget. When you look at the size of their budget, to me, majority of them are even too small to impact on the life of our people. Secondly, majority of them have more priority set on recurrent expenditure as against capital spending. And it is through capital spending that all this lofty idea we are talking about can be eroded.
I want to be able to get Mr. Paul Alaje to speak on that, because, you know, he has brought up a new dimension, subnationals, and the role that they play in this El Dorado that we are heading to, we're supposed to be heading to as a country. He says the budgets from the states are too small and focus more on recurrent expenditure and are not really focused on capital projects. With that, do you agree with that? And if that is the case, then are we winking in the dark? How do we move forward?
Well, the truth is that we want to have a country that is not just growing, but a country that is also developing. But the policy that we make, at best, federal government will consider something, look at the economy, and make policy. But the states who are within the same federation, we make their own policy, or we react in certain ways that may not support what is the vision of the federal government is. But that does not mean they are fighting. In fact, that does not mean that they are not in the same political party. It has to do with the understanding of the chief executives of states, local government, and federal government. For the policy we have made, unfortunately, most of this policy is not translating to the kind of results or outcomes that we want, simply because we are not working holistically to achieve this goal. The budget of states are too small, they are not impactful, and they are not impactful not just today, even over the years. And we have seen that play out. Government was hoping that by the time subsidy is removed, monies that goes to FARC will go directly into the people, go to state. And I can tell you that for most of the states, this impact has not been felt. For most of them, at least more than 2/3, or properly speaking, more than 3/4 of the 36 states of the Federation today, the impact has not been felt. And that is why generally people spoke of hunger, poverty, and deprivation. And not my word, World Bank in October said 10 million people as of October have been added to poverty bracket. That's not my figure, that's from World Bank chief. Some of who have observed the policy we have made and have started to analyze the impact on us. And I tell you that this policy environment if it remains, some of the expectation that government is hoping to see at the federal level may not come true. Some will come true, but some may not come true, just as some of the expectation in the year 2024 did not come true.
I'm going to pass the baton to Kayode. There's a few questions for both of you. Kayode.
Thank you, Kayla. Let me go to Dr. Raimi. There was a point Mr. Laje made about borrowing, that he says is not sustainable at all. And what the point he was trying to make was, this was what we did for the 2024 budget, right? So about 9 trillion naira deficit to be financed through borrowing. That, of course, has increased to, 13 trillion naira in the 2025 budget. And something I'd like you to speak to, because if we keep doing the same things, I doubt we can get a different result, except we just want to keep doing it for doing its sake. So that's an angle I want you to speak to as well, before we then move on to some other issues. Dr. Raimi.
Okay, talking about borrowing, there is really nothing wrong with country borrowing or state borrowing money. I think what is the problem usually is the utilization of such fund. How has it been deployed? Is this borrowing deployed to service recurrent expenditure, which is just for personnel cost and overhead? Or has it been deployed for long-time spending, which capital projects is aimed at? Of course, when you look at what the federal government has planned to borrow for 2025, it will seem as if we are adding to our debt stock, which is correct. But I think the emphasis should be this borrowing should go for development of infrastructure that has long-term gains. It should also go for economic project that has economic value. If you look at the states, just like I mentioned earlier, only 3 states of our federation has their budget, proposed budget, above 1 trillion. We have Lagos that has proposed 3 trillion naira as a budget for 2025. And when you see what is happening in Lagos, you believe that even if they had been borrowing, you can see the impact of borrowing. That's why I'm supporting a model whereby even if a state or a country has to borrow, we have to borrow carefully for special project that can that has long-term impact, that can also rejuvenate our economic activity, that can make ease of doing business easy, that can increase productivity. For instance, if we borrow to upscale our electric power generation, power distribution, power transmission in Nigeria, so that eventually the cost to individual end user of energy will be lower eventually. That will be a good thing to do. If we borrow to put railway connecting the entire country, that will have impact on transport, on our agricultural sector, on food production, food sufficiency. That will also impact on transportation of goods and services. So borrowing is not exactly a problem. When you look at states like Niger State, which has proposed 1.2 trillion naira as a 2025 budget, you will see that state is, if they are able to match their plan with action for the year, they will definitely also be making tremendous progress like Lagos is already doing in terms of capital project development. Another state that is of record is Odoh State, which has also proposed 1 trillion naira as the budget for 2025. There are 5 states with the lowest budget in this 2025 budget proposal, which again give concern to the quality of development we may likely be having, a lower quality of development, and which will translate to perhaps lower quality of life also, or standard of living in those states. What are these states? We have Gombe leading the chart with 369 billion naira. All these 5 states I'm mentioning have their budget less than 500 billion naira for 2025. They are even the lowest. So you have Gombe, Ekiti, Osun, Nasarawa, and one other state,
Well, I think it's
that
good
have
that
their
we're
budget less than 500,000.
certainly,
So
and I think it's
am
good that
concerned
the
with such
states.
And
Absolutely. I think it's good that we're bringing the states into this as well, because jointly, if you add their own budget to the federal government's budget, that's what actually also contributes to the economic, indices. But largely, the buck stops on the table of the federal government in terms of policy. The federal government is literally the one taking charge and leading. The states just chime in with their own. But it's a vital point you make, and I'm wishing that this is something that will be consistent in terms of shining spotlight on states. But I want to take this to Mr. Alaje for a moment. Some will say, well, we've talked about budget for as long as we can remember. Before the APC came into power, they criticized the PDP budget. In fact, there was a time they were going to block the budget and not let it be passed. So it's always been a back and forth. There's always some sort of criticism, and it's across the world. The US right now, there's this controversy about the budget. The UK, it's almost like clockwork. Once this period is here, there's a lot of talk about recurrent and all of that. But I think we do that at the expense of now talking about the system that implements the budget itself. Yes, the budget may be faulty, but how well is a system able to even implement the semblance of, developments that the budgets are meant to achieve? And I'm talking about the MDAs, Mr. Alaje, the ministries, departments, and agencies. They are in charge of the implementation of the budget. I'm talking about civil servants. Procurement, for example. You have, projects that are not meant to be as much as 100 million naira being quoted for 1 billion naira. I mean, what can you get from that? You have issues about monitoring some of these projects. They start, you see the signboards, you see the tractors on site, they take pictures, and a few weeks after, nothing is happening there, and they budget yet again. So I want us to speak about, the system that implements the budget. What are the things you look forward to in 2025, Mr. Alaje?
Well, I look forward to stop having big man culture, the culture of big manism. When you have a strong voice, a strong-willed person driving the entire system, things will work. But that is not sustainable. We have seen some persons that have abandoned sites in Abuja, perhaps because of the person and the body language of the person of the minister. We started seeing activity in Abuja. But as good as that is this sustainable? If after a while, maybe he serves his tenure and he goes on, perhaps to pursue another political office, talking about the Honorable Minister of the FCT, who comes next after him? We have not really seen this kind of energy around implementation of policy by the civil servant, with the support of civil servant, until we see strong. We have seen this when Nasiru El-Rufai was the FCT minister in Abuja. We have seen this kind of thing. But you know what is missing? Institutionalization. How do we bring institutions such that irrespective of who is in office, whether you are Christian or Muslim, whether you are from the north or the south, irrespective, when we have budgeted for it, there is a way of checking. Check 2025 budget. We have done, before that budget is even passed, we are supposed to look at critically what has happened in the current budget to third quarter. But we have not been able to. Perhaps we've seen some report on second quarter, but we've not been able to. So how do we say that this budget will actually give us the best, or we're going to have what we should have in it? Well, that's not the concern. The concern here is that not until we build an institution, we make functional institution around budgeting, the truth is we will not be able to do more. And where should our budget even come from? Most of the time, it's medium-term expenditure framework. And where is medium-term expenditure framework coming from? Maybe when people meet, they look at what is needed, they make medium-term projection. But is this actually what we should be doing? This is my strong advice. Have a national economic development plan, which will include health, which will include infrastructure, which will include what we want Nigeria to be like. By 2050, I know what Rwanda will be like, because there is a plan. I know what Germany will be like, because there is a plan. This plan is what we now take our 3 years rolling plan into, then we take our annual budget from. But you see, this will not be until we make that National Economic Development Plan a law. But President Tinubu's administration must quickly look at where do you want Nigeria to be. Should we always be going around our hands and balls to beg the rest of the world to come and invest in our economy? One of the key drivers of a country that has our huge, the kind of population that we have, and instead of manufacturing sector growing, according to the NBS, the contribution to manufacturing sector in the last quarter is less than 1%. This is a sector that should give us not less than 40%. But NBS said it's less than 1%. The cultural sector that is taking the lead, quote and unquote, when you look at the component, it's in green. The service sector, including bank and telco and so on, took over 50%. So, really building an economy. What should we be doing? The National Development Plan. 1, 2. What contribution? How do we want to empower, support manufacturing sector? Energy is key. What are we going to do on energy? When I say energy, I include electricity, it includes fuel, it includes any clean energy. And make this a policy, pass it to law, so that whether President Tinubu is the president for the next 15 years or for the next 30 years, another person is the president for the next 15 years, even for the next whatever year, it does not matter about the politics. It's about whoever comes to office, we know that we have a law that certain proportion of our budget must be spent on. This must repeat itself with the states. This is when Nigerians will reap the dividend of democracy. I hear my brother, the doctor, in the studio saying that it's left for National Assembly to now follow up. How easy has that been? This is the same method we practiced for decades, and it's ending in failure in our very eye.
Right.
We have seen an head of agency accuse National Assembly coming to her to beg for money, that she has paid their ticket. I don't want to mention names. So can't we make this a law that this is what must be done, and we build an institution around it, such that manufacturing sector will take its rightful place in our GDP component of over 40%. Agriculture will follow with over 20%, about 30%, and service will take the remaining 30%. What will that mean? Job and job. What will that mean? Growth and growth. What will that mean? Infrastructure and infrastructure. What will that mean? Development for our nation. Scratching the surface, passing a budget of less than $30 billion cannot deliver our country. At best, if we increase our debt profile, our inflation, we're expecting 15%, it will never be. All right, Mr. Elaje. Because
you can land on that point, because I will take it to Dr. Raimi as we begin to wind down, but you can land on that point.
Here is it. Our policy environment is saying that we will sustain flotation policy. And if you sustain flotation policy and check other countries that have done it, it will be magical or mystical to drag down inflation from 34.6% to 15%, which the budget is proposing. I have strong doubts about that.
Dr. Raimi, I don't know if you agree, if you're as optimistic as the president. Well, he said during the budget presentation that this was ambitious anyway. So I don't know if you're also looking at it dropping to 15%, or you just think this is some optimism taken overboard. But also, even if a system doesn't, isn't as productive as you want it to be, budgets will always come out. As I said earlier on, it's like clockwork, right? But it would be great to hear from your perspective what you think this government has done differently in terms of rejigging the system, right? The Odoh report, for example, still not been implemented. A committee was raised. You expect that something will have been done to show that, we mean business, but nothing has been done. In fact, the president says he's not going to even touch his cabinet. So what really is this government doing differently to ensure that its promise, the budget is called Securing Peace, Rebuilding Prosperity, would be delivered? Not forgetting that there are ministers people look at and say, we don't think these ministers have performed. But the president says, nah, he's sticking with them. Dr. Raimi.
Thank you, Kayode. The president who hires these ministers possibly have had some actionable for them and deliverables that they should deliver, one for him and for the country generally. He has his KPI through which he's measuring their performance. Yes, we can name quite a number of, some notable ministers that have performed in the last 18 months or 20, going to about 20 months within his cabinet. But definitely more still need to be done. When you look at the Minister of FCT, Johnson Wike, in the area of infrastructure development, just like my colleague off studio had also acknowledged, no one would doubt what he has done in the area of infrastructure development in Nigeria. Everyone can see. We know what Abuja used to be before he came on. We also have seen a lot of activity in the Ministry of Interior through the Minister of Interior in the passport, in the prison reforms and activity going on there. We have ministers of works who has also been intervening in road transportation, repair and maintenance of existing road and building new ones. We believe that if that trajectory continues across the country, it will lead to economic buoyancy, both in the medium and in the long term. We also have Minister of Health, as we know, who has also have a plan that vaccines can be produced, can be manufactured in Nigeria, so as to reduce the cost of healthcare services in our country. These are areas of growth that we're experiencing. We have Minister of Aviation. All of us, of course, the cost of tickets may not have come down the way we expect, but we have seen a lot of activities in that particular sector as well. Talking about having our own indigenous airline, taking us abroad.
It's interesting listening to you talk about how well they are doing, but you're talking about things that they are planning to do, not things that they've done already.
No. A number of these have also been done. You understand?
A number of them, but not all of them. But your assessment of their performance,
just like I said,
sounding like you're basing your performance indices on what they have said they are going to do, not necessarily what they have already done.
No. You see, most of what these ministers are expected to do, some will happen in the short term, some will be medium term and long term, definitely.
I mean, everyone has been talking about the Minister of Power for a little bit.
The Minister of Power.
I remember, from our our next conversation is going to be about that particular ministry. And, in fairness, we did state a few days, I think last week, that unfortunately for him, his KPI is one that we see.
Yes.
For other ministries, it's things that they,
and I believe,
that are not exactly very visible to us. But when it comes to power, that's the one that we're looking at.
That is true.
So it may be a little bit difficult for him. But I'm going to get back to you. Let's just get Mr. Paul Alaje's predictions. Fingers crossed. Your predictions for 2025. And I'm going to the same indices we used last year. The Naira to the dollar, inflation, unemployment and borrowing.
Well, for this year and for next year, definitely our borrowing cap will go beyond 140 trillion. It should be about 140, 145. If we don't manage it well, it may get to about 150. What the number says for exchange rates, it might get to 1.8 if we are very lucky. So the report you read that you saw 1.8, I think that organization, they've done the numbers and they might have used the lower limits. But if policy environment changes, we might see it at about 1,720. If the policy environment goes worse off, it might go to 2,200 if the policy environment goes worse off. We're hopeful that the central bank and indeed the entire cabinet, we do everything possible to manage the exchange rate within the possible corridor. I'm quite impressed with the currency swap that the administration is going back into. That will reduce a lot, some kind of pressure, even though it might not be that impactful. But because China is perhaps our largest trade partner, that might really, really have some level of reduction on what the impact will be. For unemployment, it's very difficult to predict that now because what the Bureau of Statistics, the method it has decided to use to follow the, what's it called? The MBS have decided to follow the ILO parameter, which now says that if you have work within 1 hour, so if this interview is for 1 hour and that's all you are paid for, and you are not doing any other thing again, and you are paid for just 1 hour, even though they may say they want to pay you 50,000 naira for talking to us for 1 hour, then NBS says that you are now employed. Whether your money is up to minimum wage or not, it's a different conversation entirely. So according to NBS, that unemployment improved from 5.2 to 4%. Well, when you look at it's a bit difficult to project because our parameter for measuring is 20 hours a week. And that is saying that unemployment may grow to 35% in the real sense of this. But we can't use that as official. We have to work with what the NBS is saying. So we'll wait for NBS to release that report. Inflation will remain 30% corridor if policy environment remains the same. And what do we mean by this policy environment? One is flotation policy. Two is not involvement of government. Three is if we keep the kind of balance of payment, not trade, balance of payment that we have for. If we don't invest to do everything to promote export. When I say export, I don't mean we are selling crude and all of those. I mean the general orientation of the people must change. 5, if we don't invest enough on energy and we see some level of improvement in energy, then we are going to see that happen. My major fear, I'll tell you, is that it's not 2025. It's what will happen when you open the 2025 curtain. What will you see next is 2026. The history of 2026 can be felt in what happened in 2022, which we saw in what happened, in fact, in 2018. What is it? It's the pre-election year. That is when there is an aggression in mopping away currency against the pre-election year for primaries and so on and so forth. And we know what has been the pattern has been. So in analyzing, it's important. What we economists use most of the time is to check the trend, not just to conjure figures that numbers will be this or that. We have to build that in our econometrics model. If you make it a stochastic variable, you see that your error factor will be in fact more than 50%. Yes. So most of the prediction will come wrong. So these are possibilities of what will happen based on the parameters of what has happened and the numbers that is released by different agencies of government and indeed what is available in terms of data from international organizations.
I'm afraid we do have to wrap it up there, but I'm sure this is a conversation that we're going to continue having because we're just starting 2025 in a few days. I want to thank both of you for being here. Dr. Raimi.
Thank you very much. I want to say we should not lose hope. While the economic statistics are there, they are also to help us to build confidence also in our system, also to suggest ways by which things can improve.
Yes.
The state must diversify the economy. They must also not just be cap in hand, waiting for FAC allocation.
Exactly.
A number of them have a lot to do that they can help to bring a standard of living
better for the Nigerian people. Thank you so much, Dr. Raimi. Thank you so much, Mr. Paul Alaje, for being with us on the program, and happy celebrations as we go into the new year.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
We have Laddie Williams on Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. Stay with us. We'll be back with more conversation afterwards.
Well, thanks, Kayla. Hello, welcome to Business Morning. Compliments of the season. We see 2024, the trading year, that's winding down. Hope you've been able to meet your profit targets this year and getting ready for 2025. What's going to be the trend for the equities market? We'll definitely find out. But let's discuss what shaped sentiment in the market. That'll be later on, and we'll get to the top stories that set your agenda. Starting now with oil prices are down in thin holiday trade ahead of the year end. As traders, they're waiting more economic data from China and the U.S. Later this week to assess growth. The world's two largest oil consumers, and we see Brent crude $73.45 a barrel, down over 0.5%, 0.6% down this morning. But we see WTI, that's a U.S. grade, that's up above the psychological $70 level by about 52 cents a barrel, 0.8%, a bigger move down there for that contract. But the active March contract, that's for WTI, was down about 6 cents. US WTI 8 cents down. Both contracts rose about 1.4% last week, buoyed by a larger than expected drawdown from US crude inventories in the week ended December 20th as refiners ramped up activity, and the holiday season that boosted fuel demand. So oil prices were also supported by optimism for Chinese economic growth next year. That could lift demand from top crude oil importing nation, which is China. All right, to the FX market now. I'll see the NAFEX rate that dipped by about 60 kobo, closing at 1,549 naira to the dollar. from a previous 1,548 naira. But we see moderate appreciation there. NFM window 1,538 naira, somewhat unchanged, to the positive side. Some, analysts saw bullish note driven by stronger demand for the dollar compared to the available supply. However, trading progressed at an increase in supply led to a slight appreciation there for the NFM. So we saw a switch there. It was a thin trading week. That's for last week with all of the holidays, and definitely everyone still have their eyes on just got back. So we see their dollars, flowing into the economy, and at some point they have to go back. But thankfully, they're not going to go back with all of that money. All right, as 2024 winds down, experts and economists are reviewing the outgoing year with an outlook for the Nigerian economy in 2025. The latest is from Dr. Muda Yusuf, Director, CEO, Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise. Dr. Muda acknowledges that despite significant macroeconomic challenges in 2024, Nigeria's economy showed resilience with a projected GDP growth of around 3.6% by this year's end, aligning with the Sub-Saharan Africa forecast. The report highlights a concerning trend, though, that emerged as the financial sector's growth diverged from the real economy, showing a structural issue there. The dominance of the non-oil sector in GDP, yet we see its limited impact on foreign exchange earnings. That's further pointing to the need for greater productivity and competitiveness reforms. Regarding the foreign exchange market, the Nigeria's naira volatility moderated in the second half of 2024 thanks to regulatory interventions and improved reserves. The outlook for 2025 includes potential upside driven by a stronger foreign reserve position and improved forex inflows. Dr. Muda also forecasts inflation could slightly ease in 2025, driven by exchange rate stabilization and lower energy costs, though several inflationary pressures, including high energy costs and geopolitical factors, persist. But we're still expecting more forecasts for 2025 coming out from other economists. All right, to the entertainment industry now. The Nigerian box office reached a historic milestone, surpassing 1 billion naira in total earnings for the first time in a single week. From December 20th to December 26th, 2024, the box office generated an impressive 1.02 billion naira, marking a significant achievement for the nation's growing film industry on the global stage. The highlights of this achievement came, that was on Boxing Day, December 26th, when the box office set a new record with a remarkable 256.4 million naira in ticket sales, made its highest grossing single day in Nigerian cinema history, surpassing the previous record of about 89.8 million naira, and reflecting increased demand for films during the festive season, and that's according to Nile Entertainment. When compared to previous years, this December set a new benchmark for the industry, making it the most profitable week on record. The surges in earnings underscores the growing popularity of both Nollywood and international films in Nigeria, with the success of newly released blockbusters and consistent enthusiasm of moviegoers celebrating the holiday season. We'll keep tracking that industry going forward. All right, now to our first conversation. The Nigerian fabric industry, that's a vibrant, dynamic sector that plays a significant role in the country's economy, with a rich cultural heritage and a strong demand for traditional and modern fabrics. The industry has attracted numerous retailers, wholesalers, and manufacturers. Now let's take a look at the current state of the fabric industry in Nigeria, its challenges, opportunities, and future prospects. With a seasoned fabric retailer, her name is Samiat Nasir, who's the founder, Mayana Luxury Textiles, joining me right here in the studio. It's great to have you. Compliments of the season.
What's she saying, laddie?
Yes, and I guess I can say this is another one of those nice fabrics.
Oh, yes.
What you're actually wearing now. Yes. No fun here.
No, but it's a nice suiting you got there.
Thank you. So, quite an interesting industry, and I've noticed a trend. There's some particular fabrics I see in the market these days. They're all over social media. Everyone's wearing them. They're like tie and dye or something. They look really nice. The trends you're seeing, in Nigeria's fabric industry, from your perspective as a retailer.
Okay, Ladi. Africa is actually rich in culture, I must say. And the current trend that you're seeing all over the country, and even is born out of the need for people to actually reflect their cultural heritage. So permit me to say that currently our designers are even mixing the contemporary fashion into their clothing line, because you find out that most people want an affiliation with their roots, be it people that live in the country or Africans in the diaspora. So you would find out that you've probably been seeing Atiku, Ankara, Adire, and the likes, and even our native Ashoke, which goes back from way back. You'll see them being incorporated into the modern fashion. It's just amazing. And I feel like there's a whole lot of prospects in the fabric industry, if you ask me.
Right, and looking at most of these beautiful fabrics we see everywhere. Talk to me about how these trends are impacting your business.
Beautifully, we have that demand, I must say. With my little experience in business, I must say that people love quality fabrics. But it's just unfortunate that we're not producing as much as we should. So currently what is happening to business sellers is we have to import these fabrics from foreign countries, obviously. But the good news is we're still surviving. I mean, the country has affected us in partly due to the forex and devaluation of currency, but we're still surviving.
Because I can imagine, if we rewind to subsidies gone, walk us through how that impacted your business immediately, and when we learned that all of those FX markets were collapsed and we saw the naira plummet.
Yeah, so what majorly happens is reduction in purchasing power. Our purchasing power greatly reduced. But as a smart business owner, we have to continue business. So what we tend to do is we buy what we're able to, what our money can buy, and then we sell. But obviously it has impacted us. Our purchasing power is reduced. It's the same way our consumers' purchasing power is reduced. So the global economy, everything that is happening in the country has directly impacted our businesses, but we're thriving.
Importing most of these fabrics, are you seeing any signs of some kind of resurrection, of production? Are you seeing that at all in any way?
Honestly, importing the rate at which we import fabrics in this industry, I don't think it's sustainable. History has it that we used to have a lot of factories producing textiles, but unfortunately, most of them they're no longer in existence, So, and even the few ones that are still in existence, quality is always the issue. We'd have people walk into the store who wants to buy fabrics, but the first question they're asking us is, I'm sorry, are your fabrics sourced locally or internationally? And that's just born out of the fact that our people don't even trust the quality that we produce anymore. So I'm going to be taking you back to the root cause of all this issue. We don't even produce quality cotton. Our farmers can't even give manufacturers quality cotton fabrics, quality cotton, right, from farming. I mean, so we need like a total overall. I feel like we should start with quality assurance and probably a government intervention across the value chain in the fabric industry.
Yeah, that's definitely needed, because it's quite incredible that with our rich, history, with fabrics, we're actually resorting to importing, that is quite sad, because I see all of these beautiful fabrics and I'm like, wow, I think are we back, at this time? But it seems it's all about imports again. So talk to me about demand. What kind of fabrics are in high demand right now?
Okay, so our people love fabrics that are of good quality. I always emphasize on quality. quality, soft fabrics that is conducive with our environment, with our temperature, right? They don't want anything too thick, but people love quality, affordability, and things that are really exclusive, that are not everywhere.
How would you describe the market? Because I see all over social media there are a lot of fabric sellers. So in my mind, I'm thinking this market seems kind of saturated. But how do you see it?
Well, I don't see fabric market as saturated.
Okay.
To be honest, because everybody has their their niche, right? But it's just beautiful to see how booming, how have been. But unfortunately, we do not even have the raw materials right here. What you're seeing is even very little compared to what you should be seeing if we were not even reliant on importing these fabrics. Because what we do is we have to import directly from manufacturers. But I'm saying, imagine a scenario where we have quality cotton from our farms, and then we have manufacturers who have everything they need regarding infrastructure. I'm talking about good electricity, so they can have manufacturing and production running, and an enabling environment, an environment that would let the business run easily. Talking about government intervention as per funding, loans, credit facilities to our farmers. The value chain would have that quality assurance that I talked about, right from the production process, which means from the cotton farming. And then we're transferring that same quality assurance to the manufacturer, because the manufacturers do not have too much overhead, so to say, right? And then down to the retailers, and then to the end consumers. You can imagine how booming that the industry would actually be. What you're seeing is very little compared to what could have been.
And I can imagine, the amount of exports, we could gain from that.
Oh, yes. I was actually going there, because export is one thing that would increase the economy's GDP. But unfortunately, we don't have that. So I see potentials if we have all of these things that I talked about, from cotton production to manufacturing, down to producing really good quality that our people will be comfortable with. The first stage is people accepting their culture. A lot of people love to be, irrespective of wherever they are, they love to be affiliated with their roots, with their culture, with that Africanism. It makes them, more comfortable. We've had people come into the store and tell us that they don't like shopping anymore in so places because they feel like it's boring, But with the African touch, it spices things up for them, and it gets them excited. So meaning there's already acceptance, right? And we have the demand.
And talking about demand, how would you describe demand in 2024 and, this season with the I Just Got Backs?
Oh, okay. 2024 and the I Just Got Backs, right? It's been amazing, I must say. It has been amazing. Irrespective of how 2024 has been, with the December hustle and bustle, it's been thriving.
Because it seems there were a lot of parties.
Oh, yes, there was.
In 2024.
There was.
With the parties, there's demand for fabrics.
Demand has always been good. We have the numbers. And you can now imagine taking it outside the country, talking about exports. You can imagine how amazing. So what you're seeing all over social media is little compared to where we could actually be. I wish people could see the potential if we were not self-reliant on importation like we currently are, because importation has all of its good and its bad. Talk about forex, talk about delays with cargo, But imagine a country where we have some of these things. We know that we will still need importation, right? But we're saying if currently we're importing, say, 90% of the fabrics, if we can move it down to maybe, depend on what we produce locally, it will boost our economy as well.
Give me a quick rundown of clearing most of these goods at the ports. You did mention delays.
Oh yes, I mean a whole lot happens in the process of transferring goods from foreign countries to our country. So we can experience delays. It could be from the airlines, it could be from the local airports, it could be from anywhere,
But what about the ports? How the ports looking?
We all know how it is. If we're even to talk about machineries, importing machineries, we will even talk about what's it called? The duties that we have to pay. It is really ridiculous, I must say.
And that's why we see most of these prices competing
Exactly.
With foreign
With foreign markets, exactly.
Right, and we see the tailors now charging so much.
So high, yeah.
Just to make.
But we can't really blame them,
Right.
because if business owners were to open up to you and tell you their experiences, you would understand that it's not as easy as people think it is. There's a whole getting your goods, turning it into finished products. There's a whole lot of unseen things that happens that we have to suffer, and we don't even talk about.
It almost seems like they're competing, that's price-wise, the ready-made clothes are competing with the
foreign market.
Yeah,
so
those foreign big names.
Yeah, so we wouldn't even have to do that if we had some raw materials here. Quality, emphasis is on quality, because people want quality.
Right.
In as much as they want to be affiliated with the African touch, African print, they still want quality.
They want that quality. Fantastic. It was great having this conversation with you. Semiat Nasir is the founder, Miana Luxury Textile. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you, Laddie.
Thank you. All right, I guess it's safe to say the equities market should end 2024 above the 100,000 level. That's the all-share index with just one more trading day in 2024. That's tomorrow. But let's get a sense of what shaped trading in 2024 and what's to expect in 2025. So you make all of that profit that you like to make. Let's talk to Mr. Mukhtar Mohammed now, CEO of Finance with Mukhtar. Compliments of the season.
Thank you, lad. The compliment of the season. You really look good.
You look great yourself. I wanted to say, I'm sure 2024 has been quite kind, to you. But, talk to me about, what shaped Nigeria's equities market, in 2024, keeping us above that 100,000 level for the all-share index.
Well, laddie, what shaped Nigerian market in 2024 was the financial sector. You saw those huge interim dividend payout that they did, and that was a major catalyst of 2024, because again, when you look at them, we're paying above what we normally would have seen at the end of the year. They were paying it as interim dividend, and that also came as a result of their right issue or public offer. That was, for me, was a big game changer in 2024, and that means that going forward, there will be a lot of big movement in terms of payment of dividend and price appreciation. You've seen that in the Nigerian equity market this year. Also, what has kept us there, you saw the listing of top company, Arada, especially in the petroleum sector. We saw the movement of Owando from a low of about 8 naira to a high of about 63 naira. So we've seen the oil and gas sector, the financial sector, even the insurance sectors was not left out, especially in the area of capital appreciation to some of those stocks despite the volatility. We've seen high price in insurance stock like Crusader Insurance. We are now seeing NEM Insurance also crossing the 10 naira mark. We see Mansab Insurance also hitting about 8 naira. So those are the all-time high numbers. But when you look at the low key point in the Nigerian capital market for 2024, you can't but look at the conglomerate sector, the manufacturing sector, the telecom sector, and you and I know what has really brought this sector low. It is as a result of the high exchange rate, the instability in the exchange rate. It has impacted on their price, negative shareholding for MTN, for Nestle Nigeria, for Unilever. These are Nigerian Brewery, Guinness, Nigerian PLC. We saw a lot of those companies suffering in 2024 because of most of federal government policy, especially the instability in the exchange. So you can say 2024 have been missed. If you are in the banking sector, it has been one of the best times as an investor. If you are in the oil and gas sector, you've seen movement. You've seen an oil stock like Saplat being the highest, most expensive stock in the Nigerian equity market. If you're in the insurance sector, you've been a trader in that space. You've seen some stock give you about 200 to 350%. But if you're in the conglomerate sector, the MTN, the Unilevers, the Nestle's, you've seen your investment come down. So it was a mixed feeling depending on which side you are in 2024.
So definitely, it all depends on where you are. But looking at the all-share index, year-to-date performance, you juxtapose that with inflation numbers. How would you say the equities market is performing against inflation?
Larry, the equity market has been one of the positivity in this administration. If you want to talk about, what have we achieved economically in 2024, I think they will not look no other place than the equity market to tell people that, look, we've seen that market drive since President Tinubu came to power. They beat inflation. If you look at the Asia index, growth of about 34%, you could say it's equal to inflation. And like I said, that also depends on the equity that you have. Some equity did not beat inflation, but looking at the all-share index entirely, you say averagely, you're looking at to calculate the average return you have gotten in the market, 34%. That is huge, and that is the one area. And this is outside dividend payment that you've seen in some of these equities. So definitely, the key economy driver of 2024, that one of the success story for me is the equity market. And you've seen that we've hit that 100,000 mark. And from you realize that definitely we may end that this year on that 100,000 mark. And then we could see a lot of things happening in 2025 to that 100,000 mark.
And, they say the stock market is the barometer of the economy. Would you say that's the case for Nigeria?
No, laddie, it's not the case for Nigeria because most of the high, what do we call, most of these companies that really drive the Nigerian economy, not over 60% market, and that is one. Then you ask yourself how many Nigerians are really playing the equity market. So when you look at that, what you see in the equity market, you can't say is the key barometer. You could say it's one of the success story of the Nigerian economy, but you can't say it's the key driver of the Nigerian economy because a lot of the key movers of the Nigerian economy are not even listed yet in the equity market.
All right, let's get your crystal ball now. Going into 2025, what do you see for the Nigerian stock market?
Larry, 2025 is going to be very interesting for the Nigerian stock market. We are going to see the banking stock list some of their rights. We are beginning to see them from the 6th of January to the 6th of January. We will see FCMB Group listing its offer. We are also going to see coming Access Bank also. And let's not forget that they have met their 500 million capital base. We are going to see Zenith Bank come with their report. We're going to see GTB comes to. So definitely what we'll see in 2025, we are going to see liquidity in terms of equity in the banking sector, and how that would play in terms of dividend payout and capital appreciation will depend on a lot of factors. For the bank, most of the funds that they are having is going to be used for expansion. Most of them are the holding company looking at various other places to invest to expand their growth. Some of them are going to go foreign, some of them are going to go global, and most of them are going to go African, expand the African base, acquire some. And that has already been done by Access. That's why people like me think Access Bank still remain one of the cheapest banks in Nigeria. The banks are awash with a lot of liquidity, so we might not see that affecting the in terms of dividend payout, because you also know that some of these banks really didn't need to go to the market, but the CBN insists that they didn't want them to use their retained earnings. So that retained earnings is still very, very liquid for payment of dividend to shareholders. So that will not be a problem. One sector we need to look at it will be the oil and gas sector coming this year. We are going to see a lot of positivity in that sector because of the kind of policy that is driving that sector. That's why in the area of divestment, where a lot of Nigerian companies are beginning to acquire assets of these multinationals. So we expect that to play out in stocks like Seplat, also like Arade, and also Owando. You remember that is a stock that have been in the cooler for a while. Finally, a lot of things seems to be looking good for Owando, especially after their AGM. Yes, we expect that the conglomerate, like the Unilever, the Nestle, they will begin to have a little bit of stability in their price, because we are like that report you said from this Modalawal that said that we might begin to see some stability in the exchange. I think I ascribe to that also. So that also will drive this industry. Also, Nigerian Brewery, Guinness Nigeria, We expect them to come to profitability. MTN, the telecom sector, I think that will be one of the most successful story come 2025. We have already seen that playing out already. Hopefully, we'll see that play out in a larger term going forward, because we expect that the NCC will approve the tariff increment, and that will affect the bottom line. So a lot of positivity to look towards in 2025, especially inflation figures. We expect it to go down, and we expect the market to beat inflation. And Ladi, before we end, one thing we are waiting for is that this 2025, we are very optimistic that they will be the hawkish nature of the CBN will come down to benefit will be the equity market.
Right, very interesting. And I hope when the Central Bank of Nigeria turns dovish, the whole world doesn't turn hawkish, like it's already tending towards, we're seeing the US Fed saying maybe just 2 rate cuts in 2025 instead of the 4 that was expected. But I guess we'll look out for all of that. Thank you so much, Mr. Mukhtar Mohammed, CEO of Finance with Mukhtar. Compliments of the season.
Thank you, Ladi. Compliment of the season.
All right, so yeah, the markets are open now. We'll get the final trade. That's tomorrow. Final trade of 2024. We'll definitely be covering that live on Business Incorporated. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ladi Williams. I hand things over now to the Sunrise Daily team.
It's arguably the most important sector in Nigeria. Powers everything, really. And that's the power sector. It's been one sector that has been problematic, just straight and clear, for Nigerians ever since pre-NEPA days, from NEPA transition to PHCN. Now we have the arrangement with the DISCOs, a transmission company, and the GENCOs as well. But still, that sector remains a tricky one. So hopefully, we end the year with another look at the sector to get a sense of what more we need to do. So 2025 will be a bright year, pun intended. We're joined by an engineer, Mr. Kingsley, Odoh, energy expert and essay to former Minister of Power, Abubakar Lee. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you very much, Kaidi. Pleasure to be here.
I don't know how it is for you experts in that sector, but I can tell you for the average Nigerian, the energy sector, the power sector specifically, has been a very problematic, stressful, lots of headache. It's one sector that is tied to people's blood pressure, because you are worried. When will they take light? When would I have light in that sense? I want this coming year to be a year where we just go straight to the point, right? We don't have time for, trying to meander and go around. So let's start. The Minister of Power, should he stay? Has his performance been up to par, below par, or above par?
I think in looking at the myriad of challenges that are before him, you will say that he's done well. He's done well in some sense, and he's not done well in some sense. So, but speaking of the generality of the sector, I think he should stay. The reason is that he's first, like I said earlier in some other on some other platforms, I said he had come from a finance background onto a very technical background. But in the short time, he has learned a whole lot. And so with that investment, you don't want it to go to waste. Because he learned so much from when he came in, the little bits and pieces of the sector, the challenges of the sector. So he has to now put on his very core administrative hat or cap, whatever the case may be, and then drive the sector in a way that its productive performance becomes critical. So we say he should stay because he has come to terms with some of the challenges in the sector. You can't wish that away. So in my view, I think he should stay.
So as an examiner, you're rating him what, above average?
Above
excellent?
average.
Above average.
Above average.
Excellent?
No, above average.
It's very interesting. As I said, Nigerians are the ones feeling this. Yes, the minister had said that we're still struggling to do 6,000 megawatts. So let's start from there. What should be our target? What should be the minimum we should be doing as a nation of 200 million people?
So consistent 10,000 megawatts would not be bad. That's 10 gigawatts. Consistent. Yes.
Would that give us at least 20 hours of electricity?
Yes, it will give some sense of stability. I mean, remember that there's a whole spread across the nation. But we'll come to that in our conversation. So consistent 10 gigawatts, which is 10,000 megawatts, will bring a sense of stability to the sector, and also will bring a sense of liquidity and a sense of, industrial push. So 6,000 would not be it. 10,000 would be something that would bring some sense of stability.
Now, I'll get to the challenge around 6,000, but I want to lay the background, right? So 10,000
will be fine.
Would give us some sense
of stability.
But not 24 hours electricity.
Well, I mean, it's a difficult situation looking at the infrastructure that we have.
I understand, but I want to know what will give us consistent 24 hours electricity. How many megawatts? Nationwide.
Recall that there are core centers, heavy consuming centers, Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt. I mean, these centers, Ibadan. So these centers are core consuming centers. Then you go hinterland just a little bit, you find that there's lots of people that are off-grid, and mini-grids.
And there's renewable energy.
And so
for them. I'm talking about the core centers.
The core centers.
Yes.
10,000 megawatts will be fine. It will give a sense of, see, if we get 15, 20 hours every day across...
No. At this point, I think we should talk about excellence.
Okay, so...
I think we've talked about, I don't want to say mediocre too much. We've said, let's manage things. Let's do below average. If it's average, we're good. But we can't keep doing that. So I want us to set high standards, what it should be, then we'll walk backwards. That's why I'm asking.
So for an ideal situation, we need about 20 gigawatts.
20 gigawatts. That's 20,000 megawatts.
20,000.
Consistently.
Consistently.
Good. So let's come to our reality now. So that's the ideal. We're still struggling to do 6,000 megawatts. And the minister recently said that, well, it's as a result of vandalism. So we're struggling to do 4,900 megawatts. And I've heard that for too long. If it's not vandalism, you hear the grid collapse or whatever appropriate term is used in that sector. But the point is, this is something we're used to. You can almost predict.
Yes.
So why is it that we keep having the same challenges and we've not been able to fix it?
It's a very, very good question. It's a very challenging time. So let me say this. I need to backtrack a little. Okay. So here you have a grid that is well over 30 years. Yes, 30, and not properly managed and maintained. So it's aged a whole lot, right? So with that in mind, you would know why we cannot consistently have this, and then there will not be some form of collapse, some form of disturbances. So that is one side. It means that the equipment, they've aged a whole lot. And what requires maintenance and change have not been changed in a long time, right? So that is one. Two, we're a struggling nation. Poverty, insecurity is a major challenge in this country. I mean, you can't wish it away. It means that because people are poor and maybe not properly oriented, they go and think that their national cake is down in these towers, right? And then selling whatever it is that they want to be able to sell. And so when the tower comes down in some remote Bauchi-Gombe corridor, because it's called a radial system, because ideally we should have a ring system, because it's radial. Once the tower is down, it's like a pack of cards. I've said this before.
I have to pause you for a moment.
Right.
What is radial? What is ring? Why do we have radial and not the ideal?
Again, it's where we're coming from, right? So ideally, I'm sure even the managers of the sector must have known that we needed a ring system so that we can backfeed at some point. But a radial system means that you just keep going forward. Means that if this comes down, if upstream, right, if something happens upstream, the whole downstream is in total darkness. And I mean, rightfully so, because you're just a one-way traffic. A ring system would have been that if this line comes down, I can feed from another source and another source, right? So it means that your up times are more guaranteed than your down times. So, but if you have a challenge upstream in one line, for example, the Bauchi-Gombe line, the whole of that axis comes down. And then you begin to find ways to solve those problems. So that is a challenge that we have had, and I think they're trying to remedy those challenges.
Let me get this right. So we have a sector that you appoint, well, people that should be the very best in that sector. Let's just assume that's the reality, because this is a very important sector to the success or the productivity or otherwise of our country. So you get the very best people, I imagine, in the MDAs, as a minister as well, and all the other, contributing factors, right? So you get the very best people, and this is what we're able to get. I don't know if you catch my drift.
I do.
Does it make sense?
Sometimes implementation of infrastructure projects of this nature, they are phased. It means that maybe we want to run a line first, and then we'll bring the backfeed much later to form the ring. But if that doesn't happen, and 1 year passes, 2 years, 3 years, you just make do with the budget that you have, I presume, and then you just keep running until a challenge comes. You now come back to say, oh, if we had done this, because it's in the master plan, but we have never come around getting it done. I think it's at the forefront right now in terms of discussions that they must form rings that would enable uptime or redundancies. That's what we call it, N-1 redundancies in those areas, so that you can have a more guaranteed uptime.
Again, I still say that there were people who were put in charge of, the infrastructure, the sector, and they come out and say, we've done well. But these problems still persist. Some of them rate themselves excellent, above average. You've had a front seat view of the challenges in this sector. And I'm trying to break it down for the average Nigerian, because the technicalities are really overwhelming for the average person. All they just want is be able to flip on that switch and get power. Yes. They want to blend, they want to do their little business, they want to ensure there is at least power to get by. So what would you say is the biggest challenge of this sector? And I'll list some of the possibilities. You can add to it. So is it a challenge of finance? I know at some point you were going to talk about the vandalism part. Correct, and you were going to blame the people. But that is why you have the government, right? I mean, you don't hear that people steal the president's vehicles, for example, or they steal the president's transformer. There's adequate security. Why? Because that is a very vital person, and by extension, everything that concerns him is very important. So you don't touch it anyhow, right? So is it a finance thing? Is it a problem of policy? Is it the infrastructure? You talked about the current minister now has a background in finance.
Yeah.
So how much of the technicality does he know, right? So is it a problem of technical know-how as well? What would be that biggest problem for you?
The biggest problem for me is the security of our infrastructure. Without infrastructure, power is not electromagnetic in the sense you've got to have a physical wire running from point A to point B for you to have electricity. If those infrastructure are tampered with for whatever reason, then we're going to constantly have the challenges that we have. So there's going to be first an orientation issue of the ones that we have. Why do we bring them down? Because the cost of bringing them back up, I recall that the entire northern axis for 12 weeks did not have power at some point, largely due to vandalism. So vandalism and insecurity, if you ask me, is a very major issue that we need, all of us collectively need to deal with. For example, let's leave the collapse that's happened about 12 times in this year. It's sad, but it's a reality. And we've had vandalism of between 63 to 100 attempts at the grid structure, which is the towers. Nationwide, largely in the north, right, but nationwide, if you ask me, because it's happening in Benin, happening in Port Harcourt, happening, of course, largely in the Gombe, Bauchi axis, Gwagwalada axis as well. So we need to put everything in context and say, look, I know we may not be able to deal with issues of vandalism in one day, but there has to be an orientation where, and this is beyond power. You see our rail tracks, people go and vandalize the issue. So it's a comprehensive, complex issue. So that's one that we need to deal with, and it's very major, so that we can go forward from where we are, as against going backwards and then coming back to where we were and then going forward.
I find it very interesting because the operators will tell you that they need more funding. They need more money. They tell you, in fact, former President Muhammadu Buhari, in an exclusive interview with Channels Television, talked about the whole process of privatizing, that some of the people who got, got the discos did not have the know-how. They weren't ready for it. That doesn't sound like, except those are the people that vandalized our power sector. It's also been said that they don't have money to invest in infrastructure. That's why they said, let's start charging cost-reflective tariffs. So I'm not sure where vandalism comes in, but we have to go to Abuja now. Kayla is in Abuja, and of course, she's a Nigerian like you and
Kayla, troublesome Kayla.
So Kayla, over to you. Over to you, Kayla.
I'll take that as a compliment, Mr. Kingsley.
Yes, compliment.
Thank you so much for joining us. But I want to put some figures to what you said. You just mentioned a few places where the towers were vandalized. No. Mr. Tunji, Bolaji Tunji, who's I think he's the media aide to the Minister of Power, released a statement over the weekend for his principal. He said it was 128 vandalized transmission towers, 128. And he says it cost them 8.8 billion to repair those vandalized transmission towers. And then, I want to be able to get your thoughts on what's really going on. The vandalism of these towers, who is supposed to protect these power installations? Let's start from there. Is it the NSCDC?
Thank you, Kayla. It's an interesting question, but so what banks do when issues of fraud, potential issues of fraud happen is they put some levels of firewalls and security infrastructure and some levels of protection so that the issues of fraud are minimally reduced. So let's come to the power sector first. The power sector, I have, in one interview in the past with you guys over the Chamberlain and Kayla, I recall I mentioned to you that we operate a blind grid, and a smart grid, an intelligent grid would have been such that before vandalism takes place, there would have been a notification, and this is by way of SCADA systems, right? SCADA systems that are intelligent, that give us information, and they're able to see the entire grid, from one ground center or a control center. That is not happening. So let us first deal with what the power sector, or what the handlers, which is TCN in this case, what they should have been doing. And I hear that they are enabling the SCADA systems now, so we want to see the full operation of it. But that is the first thing that needs to be done, okay? So once we have a smart grid, an intelligent grid, then we can nib some of these activities in the board. At least if something is happening in some remote location that I know that is happening before it comes down, becomes an advantage. So that is one way to deal with this. The second way to deal with this is we are more reactive than proactive in this country. And I expect that we should be more proactive in dealing with all our issues, especially an orientation matter. National assets are national assets. And it belongs to all of us. It's our collective funds and whatever you want to call it, to ensure that those assets are not tampered with. The moment we start tampering with these assets, Kayla, it becomes a very big problem. And the people who tamper with this, they believe that this is their own share, if you ask me.
Share
or
of the
maybe it's
national
just
cake.
share sabotage. One is that they believe
but
that...
you're not answering my question, Mr. Kingsley, because you see, we have to be able to plug where the hole is coming from. And I understand that. It's a national thing. We're supposed to have ownership of these things and be a little bit more patriotic when it comes to national assets. But there's an agency whose responsibility it is to protect national assets. My question is, at least from an insider's point of view, what kind of collaboration is the minister having, the Ministry of Power? What collaboration are they having with the NSCDC? If it is the NSCDC who are supposed to be protecting these national assets, is there a handshake going on there? We're hearing him call up on the military and all whatnot. The security of these assets. I mean, you can't stop people from committing crime. You can tell them not to do it, but if they want to commit crime, they will. So the enforcement of protection of these assets is where I'm more interested in. And while I'm getting you to respond to that, that's not the only issue that the minister raised over the weekend. There was something he called, and I want to get his words exactly. He said something about the cash backing of the subsidy, and that relates to the debt that is owed to generation companies and gas companies. Now, he says this year the subsidy will be approximately 2.3 trillion, but only 450 billion naira was budgeted. Now, he said these are the two things, vandalism and this cash backing for subsidy, just so we can get some kind of understanding of where things are and what he means by this.
Okay, so it's because, thank you, Kayla, first. I appreciate that question. So let's deal with the first one, which is the collaboration with NSCDC, right? That's the agency of government that is supposed to protect all our assets and national infrastructure. I don't work for the ministry, neither do I work for NSCDC, right? But what I do know is that they don't have enough manpower to survey these national assets, especially our lines and towers nationwide. So you would need some level of technology if you don't have the physical manpower. You know, there are ways to do this. If you cannot physically bring your men to go into the remote Gombe line that stretches kilometers into the arid lands, what kind of surveillance would you put in place to drive your patrol vehicles along those lines on a consistent basis? It's just, for me, some kind of wastage. So what I think is there must be investment, and intentional investment in technology. And that is why I mentioned earlier that we needed some intelligence wrapped into this process, whether from the ministry's point of view or from the NSCDC's point of view. And this is across all assets. The way we run, by way of just trying to physically monitor, Nigeria is a big country. That want to physically monitor this country, driving the hillocks into the bush, into the arid lands, it's just not going to work. Lots of people don't do this in other climes. So the expectation I have, or I think that should be things that should be put in place, Kayla, is we need to invest in technology, smart intelligence to pick information and give us just-in-time information so that we can take actions. Other than that, we'll be really wasting a lot of time. The second thing is cash backing that you mentioned. We're here because of the expectations. Kade mentioned earlier that the discos were expected to inject funds when they got these discos. Now, they borrowed monies from within. I hear technical partners came from offshore, but largely monies came from within. The expectation was that monies were going to come from outside of the country. Whether it was rightly privatized or wrongly privatized, that's a conversation for another day. But what I do want to say is that since that money did not come in ab initio to drive the process from day one, we started having liquidity issues. And so it had built up to this point. You know, when energy goes downstream and money does not come back upstream, there has to be a gap, and that gap must be covered. The gas supplier has a contract with government and with the GENCOs, I beg your pardon, and guaranteed by government. And the GENCOs have a contract with government or backed by government, but they have to be seen to deliver energy to the discos. The monies don't come back adequately, and so the cash backing becomes necessary. 2.3 trillion is actually the truth, and it's increasing every day. So we're saying, how do we reset that whole process? If you ask me, Kayla, I think that the discos must find ways to raise capital. Oh, we have had this conversation in the past that they are illiquid, they're in the reds, they cannot raise capital. Then they should be able, there has to be ingenious ways for the sector to be liquid. Without paying for energy, we are never going to come out of this, because government will continue to provide those guarantees and cash backing that cannot sustain the sector. So a sector can be sustained when it is business. It means that for energy consumed, right pricing and right monies are paid back, and the monies are not wasted or diverted, if you like.
Right.
But the monies come back to paying for gas, paying for the GENCOs. Once we have a genuine conversation wrapped around this, then we'll be seen to be making headway in the sector. Other than that, Kayla, trust me, we're still going to continue to have this challenge.
Well, we don't want that. But again, we've endured this for decades. But I know that Nigerians are tired of having to go over this time and again. I mean, we can talk about how people have been put into bans now, whether or not that is discriminatory, and that's still a thorny issue, right? But I want you to give a projection, maybe not a projection. Does it look like we're on the right track? And what do you expect in the new year? Is this the year where we finally get some semblance of stability? Again, we can talk about how the TCN blames the GENCOs and the discos. You're not able to give me enough power to wheel. And they say, no, you don't have the infrastructure. Hey, look at your infrastructure anyway. That's why it's collapsed. So there's a lot of back and forth. You talked about the gas and all of that, but give us projections from what you've seen of this minister, whom you said has taken time to learn. In 30 seconds, is he on the right track, and is this year we get stability?
Yes, I can say yes, for two reasons. First one is the government's metering initiative. There's a PMI that government set up. What that is going to do is ring-fence the money. So we've had what you call estimated billing customers. It means that whatever you consume is not what you pay for, because I just do you a mini, more kind of arrangement where I look at your area and I say, you know what, this is what you should be paying, and then I just continue to bill you. So whether I use all the air conditioners in my house, or I use one, or whether I don't use at all, I'm going to be paying the same amount next door, who maybe it just has just lights. I mean, it's unfair. So what government has done, or what they're doing, is that in the coming Q1, they're going to give meters. I think that's a 4-year plan or 5-year, I'm not sure.
Right.
They're going to give meters to every household so that you can pay for what you consume. And you're not only paying, the money goes into the sector, and it's real because everybody can account for it, as against when I charge you for energy you may or may not have consumed, and then the money doesn't come again back upstream. So
it's very interesting. It's like saying you're using a mobile phone without a SIM card. That's very...
and that's what it has been. And
again,
that is over 50% of consumers.
Again, we have to talk about putting the best minds in the right positions, because you would expect that if we had the best minds in these positions, they'll make the best decisions and we'll be better for it. But we have to thank you so much. You've said that this is a year we get some stability, 2025.
2025, yes.
Okay, so Nigerians heard you. But of course, you're not the minister, so...
No, but I'm very sure the
a
policies
lot of liability doesn't lie on you right now.
The
but we have to thank you
the
so
things
much.
I see, yes,
Right.
thank you.
We have to thank you so much.
Right.
Clearly an ongoing conversation. We'll be speaking with Engineer Kingsley Odoh, to former Minister of Power, Abubakar Ali. So he's speaking from a place of understanding and experience. Thank you for your time, and I wish you 2025 that has a lot of power.
Compliments of the season to all of you guys.
Certainly. Thank you very much, sir. Well, there you have it. Look at that all-important sector, the power sector. Kayla, definitely 2025 beckons, and we'll be here to give Nigerians the update. But we have to thank you so much for being a part of the show. I'm Kayode Okikiodu.
Have a great week ahead. I'm Kayla Magwa.